Hello, everyone. Gary here from Timeline Astrology. This is the October sidereal forecast. So, there is a lot happening in October. We have a solar eclipse, an almost total solar eclipse, what's called an annular eclipse. At the same time, we have a comet appear in our night sky, most likely. And these both are called Ketu, actually, because Ketu is the name given to the south node of the moon, the tail end, in a way, the back end, showing the past. And this south node is eclipsing the sun. But we also have another Ketu, in a sense, a comet, a tail literally coming in around the same time and in the same section of the zodiac in the constellation of Leo. And Leo, of course, is ruled by the sun, which is being eclipsed by Ketu in Virgo. So the most obvious expression of this, of course, is the more recent arrest of Sean Combs, P. Diddy, and the mayor of New York. This is quite obviously the case where leaders in their, field, like the mayor of New York is an obvious solar figure, but Sean Combs is also a leader in entertainment as well, or has been. And so Leo is both the politician and the entertainment. It's both. And so these two people are being called to take account of their actions, their past actions. Ketu is about the past. So, and is bringing it up in all of the details, the sordid details of that in Virgo. And with Mercury now, it's also really getting into all of the details and it's been published everywhere. Like if you go on social media, you're hearing all of these lurid details, sordid details of all of these things that have happened with Sean Combs, at least. All of the, sex trafficking and all of this. So it's showing the kind of baser instincts in a sense of Virgo, where Venus is debilitated and Venus itself now moving through Libra is looking for justice for these people who were trafficked or exploited or sexually abused. So that's an obvious kind of more dramatic example of this eclipse that's been in the making for many years, actually, and especially in the last few months. And you probably know as well what is happening in your life. You probably have a sense of already because Ketu has already moved over the eclipse degree, actually, since July. So it's not likely to be a surprise at this point, though still you have to be open to kind of everything lining up. And this eclipse on October 2nd is sort of like the fulcrum of the wheel, where everything kind of comes to the center and then moves out again. And yeah, if you don't know already, you might then sort of join the dots by the 2nd of October, in other words. You have to obviously know what these planets rule, what the sun is for you, what Mercury is for you. All of these things are coming together for you to join the dots and put two and two together and like figure out, oh, okay, so that's what it is. So it's a great time for like introspection, stock taking, taking account of our own lives and where we're falling short, perhaps, and where we have a surplus, and maybe balance the books eventually as planets move into Libra. Mercury moves into Libra later on. Venus starts out in Libra. So there is at least talk of peace. But the problem is that Mars is also going to move into Cancer by the end of October. And as the Sun also moves into Libra, it is aspected by Mars in Cancer. And so we're likely to see a lot of reaction to this, a very strong reaction to any perceived threats. And when we're not feeling so confident in ourselves with Sun in Libra and leaders of the world likewise, when they're taken down, then we could easily lash out. And I think we're on the cusp now of something quite dramatic going to unfold in the world because of this. The eclipse itself on October 2nd, as I said, it's in the middle of Virgo in this lunar mansion called Hasta. And Hasta, literally meaning hand, is about making things happen, literally making things as well with your hand. So the other side of that, and especially with an eclipse and Ketu, shows the manipulation that, for example, P. Diddy or the mayor of New York, all of the manipulation of the resources, right? Of literally of people, manipulating people to get what you want. That's the dark side of Hasta. The light side of Hasta, when we transform that darkness, is the ability to use our resources, our God-given talents and resource to help other people, to assist other people, actually. It's the opposite of that. It's about assisting and helping and serving other people. That's Virgo. So eclipses, though, twist that and how we see this now play out in these cases. Again, these are more extreme cases, but you're likely seeing this play out in some way, shape, or form to some degree or another in your own life. The eclipse itself, although it's not visible throughout the world, it's only visible in the southern tip of South America. It still is important. And where it's happening in your birth chart is so important. If you have any planets around 15 degrees of sidereal Virgo or opposite in Pisces, Anything at all there is going to impact you more, especially. Mercury is then going to move into Libra by the 10th of October until the 29th, right before Halloween. I'm going to talk about Halloween because it's a real dark time this year. But Mercury in Libra, at least until then, encourages negotiation and peace talks, at least. How well it does this, I don't know, because by the 20th of October, then Mars moves into Cancer and then aspects Mercury. So peace talks are given just a short window, therefore, from the 10th of October to the 20th to sort of try and hammer some deal out, essentially. But then we have Jupiter also go retrograde from the 10th of October. And Jupiter retrograde is about reassessing laws and our approach to our own lives, of course, in Taurus, what that is for us. But more generally, what it is the economy and money and resource. So there's probably going to be a lot of redrafting and reassessing of laws and policies. And this has a huge impact, by the way, on both US president candidates because Jupiter retrograde in Taurus is in either in their 10th house or their 10th lord. So there's going to be a big turnaround here. And this is why I've put off making any predictions, by the way, for the US election until now. I'll probably do it in the middle of October and to see, what if there is any October surprise. And then sit down and actually hammer it out because I've been studying all the charts I need to study, and there's a lot to say about that. There's a lot going on with the US election, of course, there is every year. But I think this Jupiter retrograde is going to add another twist. Then Pluto actually goes direct. One of the outer planets go direct. Jupiter is just going retrograde, but now Pluto direct. So this sense of moving forward with new plans in terms of new changes as well that are happening to the global systems. And although this is a slow process for many, many years, it's just begun since 2020 as it moved into Capricorn. Every time it goes retrograde every year, it's this kind of reassessment of the changes that have happened, not necessarily quickly or obviously, but we can see it as when we take a step back. And every time it goes retrograde, it's an opportunity in a way to take a step back and see what's happened. And now it's moving forward again. It's likely to instigate new changes to all the systems in our world, whether it's government, banking, whatever. And again, in relation to wherever it is in your chart. Venus is going to go into Scorpio then by the 13th of October, and there's this deep focus on relationships and resource. And again, together with the Jupiter retrograde story opposite in Taurus, there might be some alterations here in the economy, for example. But in our relationships again, and in world relations, we have to think about this kind of dark tone of Venus and Scorpio. Obviously, personally, this could be like jealousy and possessiveness or something like that. But in the world, relations, it could be some volatility and revenge. Revenge is the key word here for Venus and Scorpio. So we have to be mindful of all of these things. Then there's a full moon on October 17th, just as the sun enters Libra. So it's at 0 degrees of Libra, moving into its fall, and moon is in Aries. So this is quite a pivotal time as well to resolve some issues here. This is sun in Libra where it's in its weakest, but it's also moving sign, so it's weak anyway. But then there's a full moon and it's full on in Aries, in Ashwini, the beginning of Aries, which is very impulsive and wants to just bolt out the door. So we have to be mindful of being overly reactive, especially when we consider in the days after this, on the 20th of October, that Mars moves into Cancer. This means that we can be highly reactive and lash out. And instead of being responsive and responsible interactions, we might just be very impulsive and reckless even, especially if we don't feel like we're getting where we need to go, and we might kind of stomp our feet and want to get there, and that's not going to help our case essentially. So we have to be really mindful of the potential here for a lot of frustration and a lot of power struggles because Mars is now opposing Pluto in Capricorn. So I mentioned Pluto is moving forward in Capricorn, making bigger changes on the world stage, but now Mars is in Cancer opposite, and we're really going to feel reactive to any kind of sense of threat. So any kind of threat you're feeling, just notice the reaction that you have and if it's appropriate or not. And actually, if taking that action would make things worse or not. Eventually, Mars actually will slow down, and by the beginning of December, will actually retrograde in Cancer, which can give it a bit of a boost actually. But the downside of that then is like you're like given a shot of espresso, even though you're exhausted and you feel like you've got all this energy all of a sudden, and then you overdo it, and then you're like further exhausted, even more exhausted than you were in the beginning. So you have to be mindful of handling your energy essentially during this whole transit of Mars. And then finally, the end of the month is Halloween, 31st of October. But this year, it's the new moon, it's the dark moon, it's the Day of the Dead, it's Diwali, the Festival of Lights. It's all coming together. It is the darkest time of the year symbolically. The sun is at its weakest, moon is dark, Mars is also weak this time, aspecting the sun and moon. And then the moon goes into Scorpio, Mars' sign in its weakest. So we have a lot of weakness by the end of October, beginning of November. Again, leading up to the election in the US, it feels like it's like on a knife edge and everything feels like doom and gloom, essentially, at this point. Again, how you deal with this yourself personally will be important because you can take all of this and turn it on its head. And the image of Scorpio and the best image, I think, is the lotus flower. So if you consider a lotus flower, it is on the mud, but it grows out of the mud. It buries deep into the mud to grow out of the mud. If you consider that for Scorpio and this dark time of the year, don't avoid the darkness, bury deep into it, but use it as fuel, as like soil for your growth, right? That is cliche as it sounds, what is best for these transits by the end of October and beginning of November. So if you are not already signed up as a member, please consider joining patreon.com/timeline astrology. I go through sign by sign how each sign is impacted by the transits for the month ahead. And also we have a discussion which is coming up about the transits of October. It's a Q&A. And then I have the Scorpio video club where I share more of the secrets. Get it? Scorpio? Secrets of Indian astrology, as well as a Scorpio Audio Club, which is a private patron exclusive podcast. You can also just listen to the Timeline Astrology podcast, which is going up and up in the charts, I'm happy to say. People are tuning into this more and more, which I love to hear because it makes me feel more encouraged to put more content out. So I'm putting more and more podcasts up on Timeline Astrology. So have a look, timelineastrology.com. Wishing you all the best for the month ahead, and until next time.